Hello and welcome to Bulimia Sucks. My name is Kate Hudson Hall, and these are real stories from people who are suffering or have suffered an eating disorder. And it's a platform for people to share relatable, uplifting, and inspiring conversations based on bulimia and anorexia, the victories and the challenges. And episodes will include their personal stories of where they are now, their difficult journeys, and their steps taken into recovering from their eating disorder. Now, our guest today is Heather. And Heather Katz, a health coach, personal trainer, and yoga instructor. And she specializes in helping busy mums, women, and families to find their ways to fit in fitness, healthy eating, and more balanced living in simple, doable ways. Heather can relate to her clients on many different levels, as she has been fully recovered from anorexia and bulimia for over 20 years. She can relate to and share with her clients the knowledge and insight she gained from the years spent uncovering the reasons behind her eating disorder and related anxiety, and using a variety of conventional and holistic methods to overcome them. So, welcome, Heather. It's
Thank,
fabulous to have you here.
thank you, Kate. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you
Thanks
for
so much.
joining us.
That was a beautiful introduction.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Great. So, Heather, tell us now. Let's start off with, can you think of a funny experience that you've had in the past?
Yes, I have a funny story. And the one piece about my bio that you didn't include is that I'm a mom of three. And I think many of us are moms. But the story that came to mind was one about motherhood. And our oldest is now 17. But when he was a year and a half, he wasn't just walking and he wasn't just running, he was jumping. So he climbed up onto his little stool, had his name on it. I thought
Yeah.
it was so cute. It was a puzzle. He could have cared less about that. He got up on that stool and started jumping off over and over and over again. And that was innocuous enough because he was on the carpeted floor. I didn't worry about him.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward to about a year and a half later when he was in preschool, age 3, he climbs up to the 7th step, puts his beanbag chair at the bottom of the steps, and says, "Mom, I'm going to jump." And before I could say, "No," off he went, flying from that 7th step onto his beanbag chair. And
Oh,
I just watched it happen. He
oh,
landed perfectly. He was fine. There was no problem. But it's that motherhood moment where you're like, oh, what is
oh,
going to happen to my child? And
yeah.
this was how it was with him. He was a jumper. Ironically, he's a track star, and he runs sprints as well as does the long jump and the triple jump. So that has come in
Right.
handy. All that practice, it started those many years ago. But I couldn't stop him from jumping from the 7th step. And I said, "Well, next time, how about the 4th step?" And he said, "No, Mom, I got this." It was kind of this little kid reaction, like, "No, I can do it." And the reason that story is funny is because I really remember that moment of my heart just sinking, like, "Oh boy, what's going to happen?" But also the letting go, that I had to just let go, exhale, and just watch and hope that things would work out. And I think that that's a process that not only is so important as a mother, but is also a process that helped me in my recovery and just, in life in general, just really having that ability to say, okay, this is a time I need to trust and I just need to take a deep breath and let go.
I love that. I love that. And how did that help you in your recovery journey? How did you do it in your recovery journey?
Well, I think that that depends on at what point in the recovery journey I was at,
Right.
because, early on at age 15, when I had the backstory of the eating disorder is that, we were an outdoorsy family. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon in the United States. And, you know, we're hiking, biking, skiing, a very active family. So it was very natural for me to be in shape, and I never was at all concerned about food and eating. Now, I did have a parent, father and mother, both in the health professionals. So a cardiologist and a nurse. So there were conversations. It was the 80s. And so there were conversations around low fat and, you know, less red meat and all those good things that the 80s brought us. But when I was 15, I had the privilege of going back to Europe. We actually lived in Germany when I was 12, going on 13 for a year. My dad was on sabbatical. I had a best friend there. She invited me to come to Germany, spend some time with her, and then we went to Spain
Right.
for 3 weeks, because that's what they do in Europe. Everybody goes on the 3-week holiday. So off we went, and, you know, glorious, fantastic trip. But the food, and I was 15, and the wine, because, you know, it is Europe, was everywhere. It was abundant. So yes, we were swimming every day and running, and we even were learning to windsurf. But I came back from that trip, you know, tanned and happy. But I was looking down at my little belly that was also full from all of the fantastic Spanish pizza and paella, and, you know, like I said, the sangria that we drank, all of those things that were a part of just that beautiful trip. And I thought to myself, nah, I can't really zip up that skirt that I want to wear to my cousin's wedding next week.
Right.
Probably should work on losing a few pounds. You know, I was really, really innocent. Like, literally thought to myself, I'm just going to try to lose a few pounds. And
But before that,
so
you hadn't thought about it. You hadn't thought about, you know, your body image or weight or.
I think that's interesting, because to say that I didn't think about it, that's really hard as a woman to not think about it. I had an older sister who's 3 years older than I. So, you know, we always wanted to, you know, look our best and wear the type of clothes that we liked, but I hadn't really thought about it as, you know, something to be, you know, obsessed about. This was,
Mm,
I mean, that's in middle school. Madonna was very popular. I never, you know, I looked at her as a beautiful woman, and I didn't, you know, I never felt like I needed to be any different than I was.
yeah.
So no, I hadn't really thought about that before.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, you know, that letting go and embracing the process, that didn't happen, of course, for many years down the road, because, you know, I again, when I started with eating disorder, it was fairly innocent, and it was just, you know, a way to lose a few pounds.
So it was but that was kind of significant after that trip. You remember consciously thinking, "Oh, this is a bit tight for me, and let me see what I can do to be able to start to shed those pounds."
Exactly.
And then, so what happened after that?
Well, so because of my upbringing with the doctor and the nurse's parents, you know, wonderful parents teaching us, you know, we had a gigantic organic garden that my mother cultivated with our help. And, you know, so we had fruits and veggies everywhere. So I knew how to eat well, and I knew how to eat healthy. And so to me, I said, well, if the fruits and the veggies are really the good way to go, then I should just eat more of those and less of the other things. So that was kind of my deduction of how to approach it. And so that's what I did. So I started to eat more of the fruits and veggies, replacing other things with them. And then, as you well know, when it comes to eating disorders, then it becomes the items that go on the list that are okay, and the items that go on the list that are not okay. And it just kind of progressed from there. It was, you know, my list got smaller of, you know, the things that were acceptable in my eyes, and the things that would allow me to, you know, lose those pounds.
Yeah, yeah. And so how long did that pattern go on for?
Um, I think it really went on for probably about, off and on for a number of years. But the other piece of the puzzle is that I was an athlete. So I played soccer for many years, was on the soccer team. And so that was my sophomore year in high school, when I was 15 going on 16. And, you know, so I was, again, very active. So I had to fuel myself to be active.
Yeah.
And then when I went into my junior year in high school, I was recruited onto the cross country and track teams, because we had a big high school, and I would have sat on the bench a lot on the soccer team. We had girls who were faster and stronger and better than I was, and I knew that. So I took the chance and I decided to run cross country and then in the spring track. And so there was kind of this dichotomy of, I wanting to, keep my weight where it was at or wanting to control what I was eating, but yet also compete as an athlete and fuel myself so that I could be successful. So it was, I got to balance these two things. And it was, keeping that balance in the best place possible so that I could be
Yeah.
that athlete and I could also and I say less be thin because it was less about the thin. For me, it was more about the control and the the quantities and the items that were
Right.
items that I would eat.
So that was more of the focus.
It was more of the focus. And at that time, if I knew what I know now and knew what I found out in my mid 30s, at the time we had no idea that I had obsessive compulsive disorder, that I have OCD. So it's very interesting if you think about it. So I self diagnosed myself about 19 years later in my mid 30s with OCD. I spent many years seeing counselor, psychologist, and all these years with some talk therapy, talking about some of the things that were blatant OCD related um, moments, patterns in my life, and nobody diagnosed it. So it is what it is. But I think that if we had known that when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, it
Yeah.
would have made a world of difference because we could have brought in some of those therapies and
Yeah.
it would have gotten to the root of the eating disorder more quickly. But we didn't know that. So, we
Yeah.
did the best we could. So
Yeah.
it was less for me about looking a certain way. Maybe it was about feeling a certain way because there's a certain way that you feel when you have control over that element
Yes.
of your life. But for
Yes.
me, it was more the numbers and the items and the quantities and the fact that, when I got on the track or when I got on the cross country course, those numbers were where I wanted them to be too, because I was a very successful athlete. So
Amazing.
that helped.
Yeah. So it's that kind of fine line of making sure that you eat just enough, but not overeating, not eating more than you should, I suppose.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that went on for a number of years.
It did. It did. I think early on, I didn't have a sense that there was a problem other than I knew that I ate a little differently, but I also knew that I ate. Um, I think that I just was so caught up in my mind. I mean, I think that, the OCD was probably really controlling a lot of what I did.
Yeah.
I was, in addition to being an extremely successful competitive runner in our high school sphere and in our city, I was also a very successful student, high achieving, kind of that typical profile of those of us who are, you know,
Perfectionism.
yeah, perfectionism, exactly. So yeah, I have a friend, I have a friend I'm still friends with, but when we were in sixth grade, she joked with me. She said, "Oh, you're perfect, Heather." And it was a joke. It became a running joke, but it was kind of, and I thought about that as the years went on. I thought, well, I don't try to be perfect, but yet I do try to be perfect. So it's
Yeah.
it's always trying to, that push pull and trying to balance that. And we I say we, I mean, my parents, of course, were concerned because, they saw me shrink in size and wanted me to be healthy. They worried about bone health and all the things that parents would worry about, of course. So they brought me in to, see various therapists and, try to address the problem. And of course, when you're forced into it, it's not as positive of a situation as, if you choose it on your own.
Mm.
And I think that that was also a challenge too, because, I thought it was fine. I thought I'd be okay. And, I was a little bit resistant to that, as any teenager would probably be in some
Yeah.
way, shape, or
Yeah.
form.
Yeah. 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 And so when did you actually decide that yourself that you wanted to reach out for help and decided this was the time?
Right. Well, I did know that in high school it was important for me to see someone. I didn't really, connect and make a whole lot of progress at that point, um, until college. So finished high school, went to, probably my dream college, and also was continuing to run and compete there. But when you are in a new environment, and I say completely on your own, of course, you have your roommates and your friends. And my sister was a senior at the same college, and we happened to be in Colorado. So um, there was, there's so many things pulling you in so many different directions. And then you have the dining hall. So you have to navigate all of that as somebody who, has, not the healthiest relationship with food. I think that I just tried to figure it out for a little while. I tried to use the tools that I'd gained, on my own, and, from the counselors that I saw, and I tried to do it on my own. And it just, yeah, I kind of fumbled along for a couple of years,
Mm.
and, it was up and down in terms of my recovery, gaining weight, getting healthier, and then spiraling into, things not being quite as good. So
Yeah.
there was, at one point, I was home visiting my parents. We went to the Oregon coast, beautiful spot. We were at a friend's beach house, and there were books on the shelf, and I pulled a book off the shelf and started reading it. And incidentally, the girl in that book, the character in that book, had bulimia. And I found the story fascinating. I read it, but it was that book that gave me the idea about
Oh,
bulimia. And I thought to myself, well, if the anorexia isn't working for me anymore, because, you get hungry again when you get tired of not feeding yourself for so many years.
yeah.
I was like, I wonder how bulimia works.
Oh,
Again, these like adolescent minds, this
yeah.
is how it is. I thought to myself, I wonder how that works. And so when I was faced with the dining hall eating, and, social settings, and, I was in a sorority house, and we had lots of great snacks there. I tried bulimia. So I kind of fell into it a little bit, like I fell into the anorexia as, an experiment, something I wanted to wanted to try, for better or worse. And so, it was in college that the bulimia came really into play. And for better or worse, bulimia is, I think I wish that I had stayed an anorexic, because bulimia is just a whole different, like I said, it's a whole different spiral. And, the ups and downs that your body goes through biochemically, and all of those things are just tough to navigate. But couple of years of that, along came a wonderful guy who I dated for the last 2 years of college. And I think that, I kind of faded in and out of anorexia, bulimia in those years. But then
Right.
here came someone who saw me and just absolutely adored me for who I was, and for how I looked, and for how I behaved, and what I believed. Like, he loved everything about me.
Mm.
And I don't think I had that unconditional love that wasn't a parent's love or a sibling's love, ever. And so I think that it was through him that I was starting to be able to see, start to see the other side.
Yeah.
And I had sought out counseling on my own. And so I was seeing a counselor, still not quite putting all the pieces together. But I think that that was kind of the start, that we take a little stair step up. And that was the start of me saying, all right, now I have something else that's going to, kind of bolster me up and get me that, get me to that healthy.
Yeah.
The full recovery, however, not to end the story with that fantastic knight in shining armor coming along and teaching me to love myself more. The end of the story, the end of the recovery, really took a number of years after that. I became, after college, didn't end up staying with this young man. He's still a friend of mine and a wonderful person, and, valued those times we had together. But I became, last couple months of college, I became a competitive triathlete. A friend invited me out to California, so let's go do a triathlon. I loved it. I caught the bug. And again, I went back into another, athletic endeavor that really needed to be fueled, and I
Yeah.
really needed to be healthy, and I really needed to watch my, my intake and balance it so I could be successful. And so that, the athleticism kind of always comes in as a helpful thing, something that helped me to not, get less healthy. So I became a triathlete, did that for a number of years, and, kind of slowly started to take more steps out of, the, I don't know, I hate to call it like the hole, but, you're deep in your eating disorder. And I
Yeah.
started to climb out in these various ways.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I met my husband, went to grad school, fell back into the eating disorder, And then I realized that I was just tired of it. I was done. I was tired of it. It had been over 10 years. And though I had, seen some recovery and seen the care that I received from psychologists and counselors help in some ways, it really took until I was in my late 20s. And I flipped a switch and I said, this is it. I'm done. This time it's for real. I don't care what it takes. I'm doing it. I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for my husband. And I'm doing it because we want to have kids too. And I knew that I needed to be healthy for that. And that to me was like the ultimate pinnacle of what was next for me. So
Right.
that was it.
Gosh. So you remember that switch flipping?
I do very, very distinctly. It was just in my mind. I was like, all right, this is it. I said, I think that I was often looking for the perfect counselor, the perfect help. We often look for perfection. And I said, my counselor's good enough. I'm going to use her tools.
And that's a really good point, isn't it?
Mm.
When you're looking for a therapist, obviously you've got to feel very comfortable with them. But, with our trait of often trying to find that perfect person, there's never going to be the ultimate perfect therapist or perfect whatever really you're trying to do. I don't know.
There's not.
And so I think that's really quite poignant, isn't it, for people to take away, to, if you feel comfortable with them, let's open the door a bit and see how we feel from there.
Right. Yeah, she definitely knew what she was doing. And we had made a ton of inroads. Um, it was, nothing, like I said, was perfect, but she knew what to do. She specialized in eating disorders. And I just had to, kind of like I did with my son when he jumped off the 7th step, I had to suspend any concern, disbelief, frustration, worry, and just say, okay, she knows what she's doing. She's telling me to do A, I'm going to go do A. And then she's going to tell me to do B and C and D, and I'm going to do it. So,
That letting go of that tight rein.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She suggested a nutritionist and, was reluctant to do that because, they want to see the numbers and you get on the scale with them. But at the same time, it was kind of nurturing, going back to, my childhood and my mother and father teaching me how to, eat well and be healthy. She was doing that too, and just in a different way. And so I absorbed that and really listened to everything that she said and had to relearn how to eat, had to look at food differently. And so it was, a very good process to go through. That was, one of many tools, but.
And I think that's such a huge tool to begin. And it's such a revelation to have that teaching, when you've been through anorexia and bulimia, and to be guided to what what would be healthy for you to eat and how you're going to do that is such a revelation. I remember for me, it was just like, I don't think I can eat all of this that you're telling me to eat, but that's fine. I'll do my best to begin with. But it was unbelievable. It was like, oh, is this how you do it? It was as if I'd never seen that before. I had no idea. I didn't remember how to do it.
Oh, it's true, because we remake the rules. We change the story in our mind.
Yeah. And so for you, with regards to the anorexia and the bulimia, what do you think, Heather, was the hardest part of having the eating disorder?
I think early on, the hardest part was the fact that I knew that so many people were worried about me and wanted everything to change, but I knew that I didn't have the power to change it all at once. Like I don't know if I just wasn't ready or I just didn't have the power to do it, but that felt a little bit helpless, but I also felt a little bit of that independence in it. Like, well, you're trying to get me to do this, but I'm 17, I'm 18, I can do what I want. I've got this, that type of attitude too.
What
And the other thing that was harder as things progressed, especially into the bulimia, is, I mean, there's shame involved in it. That's not an easy thing to hide from absolutely everyone. So I think that it was hard to, be this college student, but yet kind of have this secret behind the door that some people knew about and some people didn't. And that was challenging for me because I didn't want to be, part of me didn't want to be that person, that type of person, but part of me didn't know how to be something different yet. So
Yeah.
those were, I think, some of the hardest things for me, especially as a young person who just wants to build their identity and build their social circle and be happy. Or just, where do you find the happiness sometimes? Not all the time. I consider myself a very happy person, but sometimes things weren't always happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And Heather, what would you, that 17, 18-year-old you that didn't want to address, the issues and get, to absorb the help that you were trying to be guided towards, with all that you know now, what would you say to that? What would you say now to somebody in that situation?
I think the biggest piece of advice is to, first of all, be patient with yourself and trust yourself. That was hard to do. I don't think I was quite old enough to really have that full trust of myself.
Mm.
But in the end, obviously, finding something bigger than myself was really important for me. So, of course, it was many years later, but it was the athletics for me were something bigger than myself that allowed me to never dip into that really destructive anorexia where, I was so thin and gaunt. I never was that way because my athleticism and my races were so important to me. And then I held on to the triathlon as something that I needed to and wanted to do so badly that I would do my best to be as healthy as I could be for that. And then eventually, of course, motherhood. So really find something bigger than yourself to latch onto that might guide you towards finding that health, but also be patient with yourself and know that, there's going to be change, and change isn't always easy. I mean, I looked down at my belly and I thought it was too big. Well, I probably have that belly right now. And that's probably what my body was meant to have. So, you know, embrace change in yourself and see it as the good that it is. I wish I could have. I didn't at that time. I wish I could have embraced that change, but here we are. Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's been 20 years now since that time. And what does the word recovery is different for everybody. And I just wonder what it means to you being in recovery and what it feels like.
Well, I consider myself recovered.
Yeah.
Definitely. As in, I don't deal with the eating disorder on a daily basis.
Because people
Being in
often, a question
Go ahead.
is often can you really, reach that recovered stage? Can you really get over an eating disorder?
Right. Well, I think that in my situation, I mean, I definitely recovered. And I was healthy. We have 3 children, but the relationship with yourself and your body and with food and with stress, and in my case with anxiety, it's so interconnected. And I think that what the eating disorder did for me is it allowed me to, you can kind of close the curtains on some things in life. You can close the curtains on your emotions. You can close the curtains on how you might be feeling about yourself. You can close the curtains on how you might be feeling about your friendships and your love life or whatever it is. So you can close the curtains and control what goes into your body. And that's what I did for so many years.
Yeah.
And so then when I started to open the curtains up a little bit, and maybe I just opened the shade a little bit, and then I pulled back the curtains, and then I really just threw them all open and exposed the window. So for me, it was each of those little steps. I needed to find out after the recovery in my late 20s, after becoming a mom in my 30s, to mid 30s, and then again later, but that's a different story. When I was 34 and had a 4-year-old and a 5-month-old, and I discovered I had OCD, I literally read, I mean, I guess I read a lot and learn things that way, but literally a friend sent me, it was called Brainchild. It was a publication, and she shared it because we're moms, and she wanted to share it with me. And it had an article about a mom who had OCD. And I said, oh my gosh, that's me. I had no idea why I did the things that I did. So that to me was the final piece that needed to be uncovered so I could throw open and look out the window and say, all right, here I am in all my glory. What do I do now? I really had to then go back into counseling and specifically have the cognitive behavior therapy that I probably should have started way back in my teens. That would have helped me to overcome the eating disorder sooner. But it's peeling back these layers and really finding what's underneath it all. Because I am not a psychologist such as you, but I do know just from my experiences and from, watching people go through their lives, there's always a backstory. There's always something underneath there. There's always something deeper. And it's not always fun to uncover it and find it, but, thank goodness that I did, because I finally was able to feel emotions again. I finally was able to really truly authentically become who I probably was meant to be, that I thought I was, and I probably was in snippets here and there, but I finally was able to be who I was meant to be. And we're talking that took how many years to get there? But, no regrets. We just, we have to look at the positives that came out of it.
Yeah. And the learnings from it.
It is. Yeah, it is. So I think that to me is really part of the process, and a very necessary part of the process, is peeling back those layers.
Yeah. Yeah. And opening those curtains. I love that metaphor. Just, yes, twitching the curtains.
Yeah.
And seeing what's out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Heather, so tell us about now. So where you are now, what you're doing 20 years down the line. Amazing. You don't think about so you don't think about your eating disorder at all now?
Well, to say I don't think about it would be incorrect, in that I work in the fitness industry. So, and I'm a petite person. So I think that, we think about these things just because I'm working with people and talking about eating and exercise on a regular basis. So it's not that I don't think about it, but does it affect my daily life? No, I can go through my life and, function in my kind of normal. Now, does that mean that my kind of normal is just like, say, my sister's kind of normal? My sister who didn't have an eating disorder? Probably not. I probably have, some approaches and some things that I do. But I think what I learned over time is that that's okay, because we need to find what works for us, and what our right approach is. And I think that, I do consider myself fully recovered, but I don't deal with my eating disorder on a daily basis. But that being said, I do know what works for me. And I stay within those parameters, and I do know what I like. And I'm in tune with all of that. And I think that, where I am now in terms of the eating disorder, in terms of being a mom, and in terms of being a professional right now, is that because I was able to pull back all those curtains, I'm a better mom. I can be a better friend. I can be a better coach or trainer to my clients. I can be a better, wife and daughter and sister to my family, because I'm more authentically me. And I think that what I see in my life now is that my passion is, of course, my children. I want them to be healthy, happy, successful, and all of the above, and never walk the road that I walked, and, in any way, shape, or form, if that's at all possible. But my other passion is helping and guiding others in their health journey, and whatever that may be. I'm fortunate enough to be able to work primarily right now as a personal trainer. That seems to be where people are most interested in, seeking my services. But what's nice about being a personal trainer is then you can have those conversations about stress. You can have those conversations about sleep. You can have those conversations about diet and healthy eating, because you can't come into the gym and work out, or go out and, run on the track, without, again, fueling yourself well, and fueling yourself in I think these days it comes down to less the, you know, the healthy versus not healthy. It's a lot of, convenience foods versus non-convenience foods and things like that. So really it's my
Mm.
passion right now to help as many people as I can. And I do work primarily with moms and women. I work at a YMCA, and it's a boys and girls club. So I work with kids too. I've trained a number of teenagers, and that's so fulfilling to help them. But my goal is really to just help and reach and support and guide as many people as I can to find their version of healthy, be it the eating, be it the fitness, be it just finding that balance in their life.
Yeah.
That's where it's at for me.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Amazing. So what would be, finally, what would you like to say to people that are in the depths of their eating disorder?
I would first of all say, you've got this. We've got you. We're here for you. I mean, if you look
Mm.
for it, you're going to find a community that can support you. And Kate, your podcast is amazing to hear these stories and talk about something that, honestly, I've never talked about in a public sphere like this. I realize it's not going to be on CNN or anything, but I've never done this. And I have a friend who actually encouraged me. She said, you have such a story and you should share it, because what if you could help someone along the way? And
Yeah.
so I would just encourage anyone who is in the depths, in the throes, in the middle, wherever you are, use us as resources and use others like us as resources. And let us help you, let us guide you, or let us just listen and, maybe provide a little bit of light and insight into helping you.
Mm.
And I think that it's okay to get the help that you need too. I kind of had to come to terms with that. So, get the help that you need, seek out whatever it is that suits you. And everybody's a little bit different. I also, we talked about this earlier, but I think it's really important to trust the process. It's hard to do that when you're in recovery, but really trust yourself and trust that process, because it really does work.
Yeah.
Be it, working with a counselor or a nutritionist or learning to eat again, whatever it is, you have to kind of suspend your current operating system and beliefs and just embrace what you're being taught so that you can become a better version of yourself and become maybe who you're truly meant to be, and just, kind of let go into that process. And then I think the next thing that I would say is that it's great to be able to also think outside the box in terms of ways to support yourself in your healing journey. So I've seen counselors and psychologists and therapists, and I've tried medication, and the cognitive behavior therapy was immensely powerful for the anxiety disorder, the OCD. But I also had to be true to myself. And ironically raised by a doctor and a nurse, I don't love conventional medicine. I didn't love the way the antidepressants made me feel. And so I sought things that worked for me. And, I tend to use nutritional therapies or herbal therapies. I love essential oils. I have taken courses in energy medicine. I'm learning Reiki, things to support us that are beyond what might be the box that's put in front of you. All right, go see a counselor, go see a nutritionist. There's other ways to meet your needs and support yourself, because you're not a box. You're a person and you are multifaceted. And it may be that, yes, those things are necessary and part of your journey, but there are so many other wonderful resources out there that you can use to support you in your recovery. And you find what works for you. Maybe it's yoga, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's journaling, maybe it's a combination of every single one of these things. But I think that that approach can be extremely powerful, and I
And
found it to be powerful.
I think
Go
that's
ahead.
a really good point, because we're not all the same, and it's experimenting. It's opening your eyes to what else is available out there, and what and trying it out and seeing if it does work for
Absolutely.
you.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true. And I think that, there's power in being able to also self-heal some, because at a point in my life, I said, I don't know that I can keep going to a psychologist every week or every other week. I need to kind of take back the reins and start using what I was taught. So
Yeah.
thank goodness I had a fantastic psychologist who taught me all the tools that I needed. And I was able to take that and use that and then add in, what else I needed that I found that was supportive to me.
Yeah. And what other therapies or at that time did you experiment with? Did you try with?
At the beginning, it was primarily working with an alternative doctor using homeopathy
Oh,
and
lovely.
nutritional therapy. She also is a kinesiologist, so she uses kinesiology and muscle testing and magnetic therapy, a little bit like doing acupuncture with magnets, and it realigns your body. I mean, I won't go too deep into it, but it realigns the meridians and helps your body to heal itself. So a lot of it started there.
Yeah.
And then, I've since dabbled in homeopathy for many years and learned about that. I love essential oils and, use them in many ways, just for basic immune health, but also for, supporting, I have a favorite one that I used right before I got on the podcast, just to kind of calm and center me and help me to focus.
What
And
was that
then
one?
Valor, it happens to be, by a specific brand, but it's kind of it's a courageous, uh, grounding oil, Valor. But the number of companies have a very similar blend. I use a little bit of every company, and I'm not one company specific
I love
person.
homeopathy. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah, and
Mm.
the homeopathy has been powerful. Then I had an injury to my leg. It was, an accident with dogs, actually, one of those lovely little things. But it was traumatic afterwards, what happened, and I sought out the care of an acupuncturist, which I had used acupuncture before, but I only used acupuncture to help me get ready to have children. This was acupuncture that addressed kind of the underlying trauma, if if you will. And boy, was that powerful. So acupuncture to me was extremely helpful. So I think it's just kind of finding, every step there might be something a little bit different. And from there, I learned energy medicine on my own. So again, I didn't have to go to the acupuncturist every week or every other week. I tried to learn to some of those modalities that you can use on yourself. So, and then since I teach yoga, I get to incorporate that into my classes and use some of that with my clients where it's applicable.
It's fascinating. There's so many different options out there, for people
True.
to look into and experiment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, Heather, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been, sharing your journey. It's been really interesting and very insightful and I'm sure it will be so helpful for so many different people to help them,
That's
in their
truly my hope,
journey.
is that it can be, and that it helps as many people, that we together with your your message, and as your message continues forward, that people like us and the people you continue to interview can help as many people as we can, because life on the other side is glorious. I'm not going to lie.
Yes, it certainly is. It certainly is. And, people can do this. They can do it.
I can. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Look at us. Yes. If we can do it, then they can do it.
Absolutely. Yep. Have to dust off the cobwebs and stand up tall and take on the challenge that it brings you. But yeah, it's amazing to be on the other side. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you, Kate. I appreciate your time, and it was my pleasure.
Thank you. So that's all for today's episode of Bulimia Sucks. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Heather for sharing your heartfelt journey. And so join us again today on the next episode of Bulimia Sucks, and make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on Apple iTunes so you never miss an episode. Plus, if you haven't already heard about it, check out my book, Bulimia Sucks, on Amazon to learn many different techniques to help you to begin to break through your painful bulimic behaviors. And before we go, let us know what you think and show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. And make sure you join our Facebook group, Bulimia Sucks, if you haven't already, where it's great to connect with, with other people that have been through an eating disorder or are going through an eating disorder, and chat about, your ups and downs, their ups and downs, and how we can all help each other. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.